It's not about speed. It's about how effective you are with your cuts. I'm going to say it now on the editing podcast. The yellow highlighter has to be...
Got a folder you're constantly going back to during a project? Maybe it's a specific folder for footage or an export folder. Stop manually navigating to that folder every time you need to find it. Just drag the folder to the sidebar, and now every time you open up a new Finder window or you want to import clips to a project, that folder will always be there on the left sidebar. And when you're done having to consistently access that folder, you can simply right-click on it in the sidebar and remove it. Don't ever manually type out the full name of the export again after each go. Just double-click the name of the previous export and the name will automatically be applied up above. Then you can add V2 or V30, whatever version it is, to the end of the name, and you're good to go.
A lot of what you're doing is discipline.
That's so
organization of that.
Oh,
I have to be organized, otherwise I can't work. Like every line has to be correct. Every color has to match up. Like my timeline has to be pretty.
It's spotless editing. That's how I describe it. Yeah,
I have so much respect for that. Because see, I would have to go finish the project, be done, go back and be like, okay, what music did I have? Okay, let me listen to every track again and then categorize it.
Yeah, but that's more work.
It is. I mean, it really is. So, I respect that.
I'm in that camp where it's like, okay, so we need to find X song, need to find X graphic. So I've got this X graphic and I've got this X song. It's in my downloads folder. I'll drag it into the timeline there and then have links to the download folder. Oh no.
My nightmare.
But then at a point at the end of the day, then I put it into the appropriate folders, but then I have to relink it the next day.
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, it's like I'm trying to maintain in that creative thought. It's like, oh, this is a great idea. And my worry is that if I have to do the organizational part, okay, I've got the song. Wait, what was I going to do with it?
Let me give you a trick. How to make this really easy without thinking too much about it. When you download something, you right-click, download, and you download to. Okay, and then you already set a folder it's gonna download to. So make every genre already before you start even the editing. Once you find a song, just make it directly download to that folder and you just pull it from it instead of going to download and then copying it over. Just make a genre beforehand and make it download to that folder directly by right-click downloading, and then pull it from there. So it's already done. And it will be faster when you actually edit because now you know where to pull instead of clicking on every single one and watching it.
Yeah, no, you're right. There has been moments where I'm like, where is that bloody... Yeah, you're right.
Be like YB, guys. Be like YB.
And if you ever have to, let's say, give your project to someone else to finish it, it will save their life because there's so many times I got someone else's project and then it cannot link because it's in their downloads folder and it's in their computer and I can't get it. And that happens so many times when you put it in downloads.
Now, for your channel, you do need a style because you want to create something that people begin to recognize, but not just that, you want something that saves you time. So devote a session just to working out all the digital assets that you will ever use again in your other videos, and then try not to keep deviating. Of course, there's room for creativity and experimentation. If you're always trying to find new fonts and end screens and call to action graphics.
Get in the habit of creating folders for your projects and then creating subfolders for your video files, for your audio files, for your A-roll, for your B-roll, and this is going to save you so much time in the future when you're trying to find all this footage, you have no idea where it is. Get organized and create folders. And on top of this, please make sure when you're done shooting videos or if someone is giving you this footage to back up all of the footage, back up your projects. You definitely want to have a backup when you're working on your project because if something goes bad or a corrupt file, you want to have that spare in that extra hard drive so that you can pull it back out. Get in the habit of staying organized and having backups.
You see all those YouTubers and they've got loads of screens. Well, it's not just because they look really cool. They actually make a huge difference to productivity and editing speed. Now, I edit on a 27-inch iMac. That's quite a big screen, but I still have a massive old television next to me that's far too big. I'm just too tight and lazy to buy anything else. What it means is, when editing, I can have my scripts on the other screen. I can have my web browser open, files and footage that I can just scroll through without having to flick between stuff. And combined with the mouse, I honestly think I gain about 15% of a time saving here. Because when I try and edit on a laptop without these things, it's a nightmare. And again, this is also a health benefit. Actually turning and looking at another screen means your eyes are traveling further and you're not just sat curled up in exactly the same position for hours. Of course, you can take a second screen really far and get an amazing 4K beast for things like color grading.
If you're only using one desktop view for all of your applications, you are doing it wrong. In both Windows and Mac, you can create virtual desktops to better organize your workspace. On the Mac operating system, these are called spaces. All you do is initiate mission control and add another desktop in the top right. Now you can jump between these spaces. In macOS, you can use 3 fingers on your trackpad to swipe between spaces, or you can use the default shortcut Control plus left and right arrow keys. I programmed these buttons on my mouse to activate these shortcuts to make things even easier for me. Now, you want to use these spaces or virtual desktops on your operating system in order to better utilize your screen real estate. So I can have DaVinci Resolve open in one space and have a Google Doc open in another, and then Ableton in another space.
You know how when you hover over videos on YouTube, it'll start playing the video without audio? Consider that moment the opportunity for a visual hook. For example, the beginning of this video, the visual hook was a barbershop quartet all harmonizing with each other, while the written hook was about how John Scott got viewers. There are all kinds of ways to do visual hooks, and all the best creators use them. Sometimes creators can even get big enough to where their face becomes a visual hook in itself.
Your first frame to your short form is as important as your thumbnail to your long form. Mark my words. What I mean by your first frame is literally what do you see at 0 seconds of your short? And does everything you see there set up expectation and tension for what you're about to watch? I initially started out where it's just me, a microphone, and I was doing this whole long intro of like, hey guys, we're here in Hollywood asking people who's more famous, creators or celebrities. First up, we have Logan Paul versus Tonic, way too long. Then I had a shorter version, and then I just got into it.
Too many YouTubers think an intro means a branded video sequence. Look, there's a reason Netflix lets you skip intros nowadays. No one cares. Intros, for the most part, just satisfy the ego of the creator. They want some fancy brand and intro that helps them feel legit. The first seconds of your video need to create congruency between the title and the thumbnail and the intro. Look, the viewer clicked on your video hoping for something. So if you can give them exactly what they're expecting from your title and thumbnail, odds are they will like and watch your entire video. All of that is decided in your hook and intro. See how Mr. Beast starts this video? There's total congruency between the title and the thumbnail and the intro. Or how Isaiah Photo starts his video. Again, total congruency between the title and the thumbnail and the intro. In the first 3 seconds of your video, you want the viewer to think, this is exactly what I was expecting. Hi, it's me, John, the editor, and so I was sitting here editing this video about to publish it before I realized that for this hook and intro, I forgot the most important, crucial thing you should know about a hook and intro. If you were to do this thing, it would ruin your whole YouTube career. Never, ever start your hook and your intro to your video like this. Sup guys, welcome back to the channel. So glad you're here. But first, I would just love and appreciate it if you could hit that like button and that subscribe button. It just helps me so much. I'm basically just on here for people to help me. And now I've wasted about 30 seconds of your time and I haven't helped you. I've just asked for you to help me this whole time. All right, so hopefully that was obvious as to why you should never start your hook and intro like that, because why don't instead you figure out what can I give to someone else instead of just trying to focus on you the whole time.
The documentary about Drew Barrymore, the one thing that gave me that fire inside me was Adam, my researcher, found these 2 clips, one of Drew Barrymore in 1997.
What's the dream? Same one I've had since I was little. To be on a farm, to be with lots of animals, to be with someone I love, and one night it'll rain and I'll know that I finally got there.
And the interviewer said, one night it will rain. What does that mean? What's that got anything to do with it? And she just says,
I love the rain.
And that's one clip she said in 1997. And then he found another clip of her in 2021.
Whenever you can go out into the rain, do not miss the opportunity.
Out of context, she looks crazy. She looks like she's just happy in rain. But then we knew that once we had those 2 clips, that I already knew the exact ending to the whole documentary. It's like, we know now there that she has come to a happy place. She's reached that final point of success. And like that lit me up inside. I was like, we have to do anything what it takes to make sure that we complete this documentary just so we can get to this ending, because it was perfect.
What's the dream? Same one I've had since I was little. To be on a farm, to be with lots of animals, to be with someone I love. And one night it'll rain and I'll know that I finally got there.
One night it will rain? What's that got to do with it? Whenever you can go out into the rain, do not miss the opportunity.
I love the rain.
there was this one piece of content that I was editing. I was spoiled with the amount of fantastic footage that I could play with, and I wanted to show all of it off, but it was too long. What ended up happening was I ended up repeating the same emotion constantly over and over again for a whole minute. If it undermines the value of the rest of the edit, cut it. So I chose to murder my darlings. It started off as 1 minute, but instead I made it 20 seconds. What that means is you're respecting your audience's emotional investment by not making them bored.
Simple cuts. Specifically, 2 types of cuts. I am saying something, and now I'm saying something else. What the camera did right there, that was a cut in. And this is a cut back, or a cut out. I like to say cut back, because it's like you cut back to where you just were. These 2 little cuts can help emphasize a point, create momentum, and most importantly, keep the viewer's attention.
Jump cut is all about pacing, and pacing is the most important tool that you can use to keep your audience engaged. Imagine how boring it would be if we never cut out those silences in between. It would suck. However, it's easy to assume that a jump cut is an easy cut. Just wait until you stop speaking, find the next point where you start speaking, roughly cut out that silence in between, and call it a day. No. Don't leave that little moment of silence in between cuts. It affects the pacing of the video, and most importantly, it negates the reason for a jump cut. What you need to do is have both the last syllable and the next cuts have the first syllable as a J cut begin at the same time. If it sounds unnatural or jarring, simply experiment by extending the B-side by 1 more frame until it sounds clean and immediate.
Use J cut and L cut. It helps viewers understand how one shot follows another without confusion. In a J cut, the audio track from the second scene overlaps the video of the first scene. In a L cut, the audio from one shot continues underneath the video of the second clip.
Cross-cutting, also known as parallel editing. This is just a way to build suspense, having 2 narratives play out at the same time. You'll see this a lot in like heist thriller movies where people are on the phone. 2 characters are in different locations and they have to come together, or one character is being chased by another character. So what this does is allow you to tell 2 stories at once, taking the viewer back and forth from perspective of the varying characters in your movie.
In video editing, there is something called pacing, and we generally think of pacing as the timing of shots. Maybe it's how it's lined up with the music, maybe it's the duration of the shots themselves, but there is another aspect of pacing that is even more important, and I like to call it the action window. Anytime you're filming a shot that is planned or scripted in some sort of way, that could be a film or a product commercial, even a YouTube tutorial, the action window is that portion of the shot where stuff is happening. For example, in this shot, I hit record, we'll maybe roll for a few seconds, then once I say something like 3, 2, 1, go, the action will begin, and this is the start of the action window. The movement or gesture we're capturing might last for only a split second, or it could go on much longer, but once that movement stops, this is now the end of the action window, and I might still record for a couple of seconds afterward, you know, just in case. So what's the problem here, and why am I telling you about the action window? Well, in a lot of videos I've seen recently, many people are cutting their clips outside of the action window. Sometimes a shot will start before the action window begins. This is what I like to call a delayed action. Now, sometimes you have the opposite, where a shot lasts longer after the action window has already ended, and this is what I call a lingering shot.
People make the mistake of keeping everything that they film. The best YouTube content cut out over 70% of what they film and show only the best 30% of the video. And honestly, you'd be surprised how that's already more than enough. The best example would be Logan would film about 2 hours of content for one of his vlogs during 2020, and we turn those vlogs into less than 5 minutes. That means so much is cut, and we are to a degree showing a highlight reel of his day, but what that then means is you then get the best of the best, and that creates such a highly engaging piece of content. Same thing for me, when I film some of my videos, I could film for over 2-3 hours, and I brutally cut these things down to 10 minutes or less, because I only want to show you the best thing. And so that's the biggest mistake, especially if you're a new creator and you haven't quite got the skills yourself.
I think one of the things people tend to struggle is knowing what the best part is. Have you got any like litmus test?
Yes, my favorite one is this. If, let's just say you have a piece of dialogue here or a point here, and you got another point over here, and you got all of this in between. If you cut out all of that in between, and these 2 points come together, and it still makes sense, that means everything in between could have been cut.
It's also important to consider pacing, making sure that the length of your shots and the placement of your cuts have a natural flow throughout the edit. There are no concrete rules for pacing, it's just whatever like feels right. So if a shot is too long or too short, then it could feel very jarring and abruptly take the viewer out of the story. This is the part of the process where you watch a cut over and over again and just move it like a frame or two at a time until it feels natural. Some of my techniques here include cutting on notable impacts and motions within the shot, like a foot hitting a ground or someone passing in front of the camera, and also making sure to cut clips such that they have a continuous motion or energy from one shot to the next.
Pacing is absolutely critical to a killer YouTube video to blow up your channel. Because when you click on a video, what's the only reason you'll stop watching? Only if it was boring. In other words, the pacing is off, the viewer lost interest, and now the viewer's clicking the back button. Pacing is even more important for YouTube than it is for like big screen movies in the theaters. Because if you pay money to watch a movie, you'll sit through it even if it starts to suck. But for YouTube, if I'm bored or uninterested for even like 5 seconds, I'm bouncing and watching something else. Rewatch your edit over and over and over and over again and pay attention to where you get bored or lose focus. Those are usually the parts that need to be re-edited or cut completely. Every single second of your video needs to somehow add value to the viewer. Lengthy 10-second branded intro, cut it out. Unnecessary dead space, cut it out. To write is human, but to edit is divine. Why take 20 minutes to get your point across when you can effectively do it in 5? Every story is collapsible to some degree. If you can't cut out 10%, you're not trying very hard. I know there's bits of the video you so badly want to have in there, but if it doesn't contribute to the point of the video, cut it out.
All of this is to say, it's not a sin to trim, but it is a sin to over trim. Sometimes silence speaks loudest. Body language can say so much more than dialogue. And if the eyes are the window to the soul, then sometimes holding on to eye movement will suck us into the piece. So yes, murder your darlings, but don't throw the baby out with the bath.
Let's talk about sequences, which, in my opinion, is one of the most important foundational things that you need to understand for filmmaking, video editing, content creation, really any type of visual storytelling at all. And in my opinion, this is where most internet videos and amateurish films fall apart. A poorly built sequence is going to either confuse your audience or they're just going to get bored and click away. Okay, so then what is a sequence? Well, functionally, it's just a few shots, typically around 3 to 5, that are strung together in order to help move the story along.
The assembly of film and how it can be changed.
What's interesting is that depending on how you structure that sequence, depending on how you move the story along, it can drastically alter the tone of the video and your audience's understanding of your characters and their motivations.
Depending on the type of video you're making, there's generally 3 questions that will guide your scriptwriting process. When you answer these 3 questions effectively, you can write a killer script. If you're making an educational or tutorial video, always ask this question first. What do you want the viewer to do to get them the result they're looking for? Then what do they need to feel emotionally to take that action? Then finally, what does the viewer need to know? For example, when making this video, my goal was for you, the viewer, to make a killer YouTube video, to blow up your channel and to practice. And then you need to feel inspired that you can make a killer video, that you can turn your motivation into momentum. To do and to feel those things, you need to know the minimal process to plan, script, film, edit, and grow. Now, I will constantly refer back to these answers that I wrote down because every single line of my script needs to somehow point back to these answers, and if it doesn't, it gets cut. If I were making a gardening tutorial video, man, I'm really into gardening lately. Maybe my do, feel, and know would look like this. Or if I'm a gaming channel showing off the best speedrun tactics in Legend of Zelda, my do, feel, and know would look like this. If you're making an entertainment video, then these are the questions you'll ask instead. What's the big interesting idea of the video? What does the viewer need to feel while watching? Then finally, what does the video need to include to be entertaining? For example, if I was writing a script for Davey504, here's how I would answer the questions for him. Or if I'm Isaiah Photo, here's how I would answer these questions. These answers will guide your entire script writing process. Every single line of your script should somehow point back to these answers.
Using visual cues to convey meaning. Visual cues can be text overlays, graphics, or symbols to help convey important information or themes in your story. For example, you could use a messaging animation like I just did to show a conversation with your friend. Especially with short form content, it can be hard to tell a story with only camera shots, so visual cues are a great and engaging way to do that. And even in my long form content, I find visual cues very helpful, because why should I waste a lot of time giving the viewer certain information if I can also do it quicker? It's just more engaging overall and leads to better audience retention.
Ryan also sets the stakes. He mentions that 30 minutes inside the quiet room supposedly drives you insane, and then goes on to say he believes that's a myth. He instantly gives the video a why. This is a very optimized start, but then he lets his personality show in his editing. As simple as the previous 20 seconds might seem, this is perfect YouTube storytelling. First of all, it's low production value, intentionally. The audience on YouTube don't really care about fancy transitions or text effects. It feels more relatable when someone uses a font like this. His delivery is also pretty mellow. He sounds like a normal person, which adds to this relatability. Also, notice how it is pretty much non-stop talking. Data shows us that video footage with talking holds viewers' attention better. I guess it's harder to click off a video when someone is mid-sentence.
Little bits, and now we have to sit down and go, okay, how can we build a story out of the little scraps that were just handed to us? And that to me is a really exciting challenge that I don't know. That's why I love it.
Where most creators would stop, you guys always just keep going, which is really, really just as a huge testament to the content that you make and the patience that you have while making it as well. Because everybody on YouTube is so fearful of what happens if they don't upload or what happens if they're not consistent. And you guys are like, shoot, this story isn't as good as we can make it. So how can we take it to its fullest potential?
Yeah, story is king. Like, if we're not telling a good story, why are we doing it? I think honestly, like the past couple of years on YouTube, it has definitely turned into people making videos just to become a big YouTuber, not because they actually like storytelling. I think a lot of people started off that way and then found their love of storytelling, and now we're evolving. There are some amazing stories being told on the platform right now, and I'm excited for the new sort of pivot of the direction of the platform, which I think everyone is starting to feel that occurring.
How did you guys learn storytelling personally?
I mean, I came from strictly digital, title, thumbnail, it gets views, good, replicate it, move on. And what I don't even think I realized then is even some of the most viral vines have a beginning, middle, and end.
Wow.
And a payoff and a reversal of expectation.
In
like a 6 seconds, you can tell a full story. And literally all the best performing videos on YouTube have those 3 elements.
Eye trace is guiding the viewer's eye through the frame so that they don't have to be searching the entire frame to figure out what they should be looking at. So for example, if the main focal point of shot A is on the right side near the top, you might want for your next clip, shot B, to have a focal point in a similar place rather than on the other side of the frame. This way the viewer's eye is already looking there when the second shot comes up. If it's something like an action sequence or a fight scene where there's a lot of movement and the clips are sometimes less than a second long each, using eye trace to our advantage can sometimes make things more enjoyable for the viewer. If you do need to switch the placement of where the viewer is looking, holding on a shot just a little bit longer to give them the time to visually sort it out can be helpful. But if you've got 2 shots that are close but not quite right, you can consider reframing one by zooming in a bit and then moving to match it better.
Putting thought into the shots you are recording is just as important as the editing process. And if you take a little bit of time to really put thought into what footage you're getting or setting up a shot, it will make the editing process a lot easier and add a lot more to your video. Some techniques I use is rule of thirds. Using rule of thirds can really make your shots more interesting. If you don't know what rule of thirds is, you can look it up. It's a pretty simple concept. If you take in any like photography or art class, you probably already know what it is. I also love symmetry, and I think this comes partly from my love for Wes Anderson. While filming, I really love a straight on shot, make sure everything is leveled correctly, and a lot of times I like me being directly in the middle. I try my best to make sure shots aren't like crooked or like at a weird diagonal, or I just make sure everything is like perfectly aligned, at least most of the time.
Symmetry. Typically there's two different situations in which this happens. One is when you're highlighting the beauty in a shot. For some reason, as humans, we really respond to symmetry. It looks and it feels good. And to be honest, that's the main reason why a lot of people will choose to use it, because symmetry just feels good to look at. But you've got to keep that in mind with this second piece. Whenever you put someone or something in the center of frame, you're telling your audience, I really, 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 really want you to focus on this. This is why you'll see these kind of shots used a lot when a character is experiencing a powerful moment. But if that thing isn't really worth focusing on, or if that person isn't saying, doing, or feeling something important, it feels like you're getting a conflicting message. Visible lines in your shot will subconsciously tell your audience where they should be looking at. When your eyes look around the screen and they see those lines are basically saying, hey, how's it going? There's nothing really going on over here, but let me show you where the great stuff is happening. So let's go. It acts as a gentle way to help guide your audience to focus on a specific point that you want them to. And like symmetry, it adds an element to your shot that's just really nice to look at.
My sort of like personal agenda is don't like over editing. If you're throwing really aggressive, colorful subtitles that come in with a motion blur, you're cutting fast, you're cutting to like 20 different motion graphics, you're cutting to this, and it just seems a bit chaotic. And I think what that does is that kind of screams insecurity that your video is not good enough. Whereas I think intention of like, I can trust my audiences that they can ingest this video and they will enjoy it and they will retain the information I want them to have. That intention is, you will feel that confidence. But then with the over editing, you feel the insecurity. And so I think the most important thing in any edit is you have to be confident in the video that you're making and that people will enjoy it.
Don't over edit for your audience. A mistake I see a lot of creators make is that they think more editing equals better performance, which simply isn't the case. I've even made this mistake myself in the past. Just take a look at the YouTuber Penguin0. The man just throws in a few cuts and B-roll transitions and still brings in a few million views per video. Or take a look at my buddy Micaiah, who's brought in hundreds of thousands of views with very simple A-roll and stock footage. The point I'm making is that editing is not the star of the show, it's simply the supplement, which means that you need to align your style of editing with your audience's preferences. And also realize that the value of your content is way more important than the way you present it. If you have a younger audience, you'll likely need to add more transitions and fancy editing gimmicks to drive retention, but on the contrary, if you have an older audience, you probably won't need to employ this as much, and doing it might even overwhelm your audience. So again, the level of editing that you're employing in your content really just depends on who you're making videos for. And again, you definitely don't want to over edit. Now, to keep the big transitions for the big moments in your video. Transitions are a super important part of the editing process, but if you're going to throw in a huge whoosh or zoom or whatever else, then you're going to want to make sure you do it at the right time to keep retention high. Some creators I talk to think big transitions in their edits equal better retention, but unfortunately, they don't. Instead, they really only work when you're doing something big, changing scenes, or really anything else that warrants that big transition versus otherwise where people get distracted, you over edit, and they click off. For example, take a look at this clip of Mr. Beast. You can see that he uses a big transition sequence when he's going to one of the biggest houses in the video. The key here is that if you're going to use a big transition sequence, it needs to be at the right time. And in every other scenario, you're probably just going to want to use jump cuts so you're not, again, being distracting, over editing, and losing viewers. Remember, editing shouldn't steal the show. It should really just be a supplement to the value of your video.
Here's what we do now. Here's what a pro editor would do. They have a system in place and they know how to optimize their workflow for the computer that they're working off of. First, they would do a story pass. So they add in all the A-roll clips, all the talking head, whatever they want. They would make sure that they have a story cut, locked, and finished. Then they would add the B-roll as a next layer on top. Then they would add graphics. Then they would do a sound and sound design pass. Then they would do a color pass. And then they would do the finishing pass on the rest of the edit. Typically, the perfect combination for a smooth video editing experience is when you have an efficiently built edit.
Give your viewers a break. Definitely don't be afraid to give your viewers a break. A lot of YouTubers hyperstimulate their viewers with side-by-side or even overlapping voiceover tracks and cuts, and eventually it just becomes way too much for a viewer to digest if they're getting information thrown at them like crazy. So instead, in In between different sections of your video, I'd recommend giving your viewers a little bit of breathing room, and you'll notice that some public speakers even do this. Like for example, Barack Obama here has breaks in the way he speaks.
We know the battle ahead will be long, but always remember that no matter what.
This makes him appear more confident, and it doesn't hurt him because his audience is engaged enough to a point where little pauses really just keep them listening as opposed to making them tune you out. So definitely cut your voiceovers this way too, and you'll have better retention instantly on your videos.
You need to find a workflow that is efficient for you. And that's actually a really big part of editing. So I'll go and I'll line up the A-roll for all 4 videos first. And then I'll go back and I'll cut out all the mistakes and any content I feel doesn't need to be in the video. And then I'll go and do a round where I just add the J-cuts for all 4. Then I'll do a round where I just add the text. Now this might not be right for you, but I find that the headspace you're in for cutting out repetition, adding J-cuts and jump cuts is a totally different headspace to adding all of the really creative and sexy bits after. So I try to batch things in an order and then finesse them all individually. Now the great thing about this is if you do all the boring bits first, you've then only got the fun bits left, and it's just so much more enjoyable doing it that way. Now if you don't batch edit and it's just one video, then it's still kind of like the same process. Whatever you do, just don't edit the video from start to finish. So by that I mean don't try and make the first 10 seconds fully complete and then edit the next 20 seconds to make that fully complete.
I sometimes work with 2 or 3 timelines at the same time. So I just duplicate my existing timeline and move it down. Now we have 2 timelines stacked on top of each other. The top one will still be the one which I sorted. I call it the ingredients sequence or timeline. Sequence and timeline is basically the same. The bottom timeline will be totally empty because I just deleted everything out of it. I call it the canvas timeline, where you just put the dish on there. Now we can name the different tracks: A7S1, A7S2, A7S3, After Effects comps, Overlay 1, Overlay 2, so on. I call the audio tracks Audio 1, Audio 2, Music 1, Music 2, SFX1, SFX2, SFX3, and so on. Now I go through the upper timeline and check the footage again. If there is something I like, I drag it down to the lower timeline. I repeat this whole process until I'm done with the rough edit. After the rough edit is done and all the clips I like are in the lower timelines, I start shaping the story, adding music, and just make it nice.
You can either select the clip that you want to base your timeline settings on, drag that into the timeline window where it says drop media here to create sequence, and that will automatically generate a timeline based on the settings of the clip. You can do it manually by coming down here to this box and come up to sequence and then just check to make sure that all of this is okay. Hit okay and it creates a new sequence for us. You're going to want to go ahead and label that new sequence to whatever it is, because later if you start having multiple sequences, like when we add the multicam sequence, it gets a little bit confusing. So my process for culling through footage might be a little bit different than other people's, but what I like to do is start at the very beginning, the first clips I've shot. I open that up in my source window and I just play through it and find the best parts of the clip that I want to keep, that I want to include in the edit. I'll hit I on my keyboard to set an in point, and I'll hit O on my keyboard to set an out point, and then I will hit comma to send that clip, that choice clip, that little tiny portion down into the timeline for use for later.
So Resolve finally has automatic subtitles like Premiere. So that's Resolve kind of catching up to Premiere. So glad they added that. That's why I was actually still going over to Premiere for social media content, the automatic subtitles. But the most important AI addition is it now has DaVinci Neural Engine powered text-based editing. So let me actually show you how this works. So this podcast is an hour. Let's see how long it takes for Resolve to transcribe the entire hour. Only 2 minutes and 42 seconds. So as you guys can see, when I click on a certain word, it actually goes wherever that is in the video, which is pretty crazy.
I have so much unlisted stuff.
Though, I don't know if you know.
And say you want to make a clip, you can literally highlight the sentence you want and then press insert down here, or the shortcut, I think I have it set to N, boom, and you can actually start cutting from the transcription.
And I've said this before, and I'll say this till the end of time.
use the remix tool. Go to your toolbar, click and hold this ripple edit tool, and then click on remix. Now we're going to grab the end of the song and we will extend the song all the way till the end of the video, and we'll watch Premiere Pro do its magic. Now this also works if you want to shorten a song. It's honestly just a brilliant way to not have to cut the music and try to make it work yourself to make it a specific length in your video. And if you're curious about what this sounds like, because I've gotten that question more often, well, I am using this tool in all of my videos, so also in this one. So if you haven't heard any weird cuts or anything, that is because this remix tool is just magic.
Midjourney is essentially this like tool that you can input a prompt and it will give you a bunch of really high quality AI generated images. You say that sentence and it can put a funny feeling in anyone's tummy. There are a few creative instances where it's been perfect for me, because I always want to approach these documentaries as if, okay, if we were shooting this for real, if we had a film set and we were able to shoot reconstructions, what would we shoot? That ability now where I don't need any of that. I can just write a prompt and it will give me all these ideas, and I can take something, even if it's just like an idea, and then run with it. That's been liberating. But also there's something about Midjourney is that it does have that kind of uncanny vibe to it a lot of the time. And I've really lent into that. That's something that I've pushed. I don't want to hide away from it. I don't want to make it look like it's real. This has to be, I'm leaning into that uncanny valley type of thing. So in this Drew Barrymore documentary, there's a sequence where she is in the nightclub. She's like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, getting drunk for the first time, taking coke for the first time. And using Midjourney, I could prompt all these low angle shots of in a nightclub with all these adults surrounding her, looking at her, laughing at her, which already when they come straight out of Midjourney, they look strange and a little bit out of place, and the eye lines aren't looking right, and you're naturally put off by it. But then I can take that into After Effects and I can do a whole bunch of compositing. That's when I throw all my film grain effects and I do a bunch of chromatic aberration and make it feel like it's from that era. And so it ends up feeling like this real refined, cohesive style throughout the film, which I really like.
So make sure to use Midjourney for all your drunk and, tripping on stuff. Well, that's what I got.
Would you welcome, please, Drew Barrymore.
In the beginning of the Drew Barrymore documentary, one of the very first shots is her coming out on stage on her very first late night talk show event at 7 years old. And she's wearing this pink dress and a pink ribbon in her hair. In Midjourney, I wanted to prompt an image of her standing behind the stage curtains, about to go on stage. And we look behind her head. We are in her world, about to, into stardom. And so in Midjourney, I prompted the back of a little blonde girl's head behind stage curtain, about to go on stage, wide shot, cinematography, 1980s, 35mm film, symmetrical framing, center framing, 16:9 aspect ratio, Midjourney V5. It prompted this image, which is a wonderful shot which looks like it could be shot in the 1980s on 35mm film, but it's not wearing a pink dress and it's not wearing a pink ribbon. So I then took that image and threw that in Photoshop Beta, which now has a new generative AI tool, which is like Midjourney, but now you can select just certain parts of the photo and prompt something there. So then I could select the back of her head, change her short hair into long hair. I could select her dress and turn that into a pink dress as opposed to like a brown dress, and then select the back of her head and add a pink ribbon there, and it all looks pretty much exactly what I wanted to look like. And that's the opening shot. So then directly after that, we can cut to the real life video of her stepping out on stage wearing similar clothes.
Would you welcome, please, Drew Barrymore.
Fuck off.
The first automation tool we have on the list today is a Premiere Pro extension called Beat Edit, which, as the name implies, is meant to make it easier for you to edit a bunch of clips to the beat of your music track. Typically, whenever I wanted to edit a music-based video, my first step was usually to create beat markers manually by tapping the M key on the beats during playback, and I always had to go back and refine the marker positions. But now with Beat Edit, you can simply load music of your choice and it will auto-detect the beats and generate clip or sequence markers. The markers can then be used as a guide for manually trimming clips or for automatically assembling a music edit using Premiere Pro's Automate to Sequence feature. Now obviously this only works well with songs that clearly mark the peaks, like mainstream hip-hop, dance, techno, and other type of music that has clear hits. However, I still find beat edit extremely useful, especially if you're just a beginner looking to create a quick edit, or even a professional who wants to speed up his process.
Mr. Beast and Mark Rober start with a title and thumbnail. They know that if they can make a killer TNT they know their audience will want to click on, that guides their filming, editing, everything. Start with the title and thumbnail instead of doing it last. So what makes a great title? Here are some common titles we often see YouTubers make. Life update, how to succeed in life. If you make a life update video, that only applies to a maximum the number of current followers you have. So if you've only got 800 subs, that life update video is only going to potentially be interesting to a maximum 800 people. For a killer video that can blow up your channel, we want a video that can interest and intrigue up to 8 million people. All right, so let's tweak this title just a little, or a lot. Junior software engineer and YouTuber, a typical day in my life. Do you feel the difference here? Do you see how this can appeal to like at least 1 million people now? Sure, maybe it's still a life update in a lot of ways and stuff, but change that title and you can appeal to so many more people. Now this video on the other hand is way too general and broad and unspecific, and it doesn't intrigue me at all. Let's change it up. What to do when you fall short of your goal, motivational. Do you feel the difference in that video? These aren't just titles anymore, these are killer titles with the potential to blow up a channel. Now time for the other half, thumbnails. Because you're not creating just a title and you're not designing just a JPEG image. You're creating one whole title and thumbnail designed to create interest and intrigue for the viewer to want to click. I like to sketch thumbnails on a paper or an iPad alongside the title. That way when it's time to pick up a camera or Photoshop, I already know exactly what I want to create. And I'm constantly keeping that holistic view of the video rather than just its individual parts. So take a look at these average thumbnails and then compare them with these super successful thumbnails. What's the big difference? How come people are clicking these thumbnails instead of these ones? It's not image quality or aesthetic. My guess would be to take a look at the title and the thumbnail as a whole. These two thumbnails are just restating what's already in the title. There's no like additional interest or intrigue to want to click. These two thumbnails, on the other hand, complement the titles. There's a simple title that interests me and the thumbnail creates intrigue. Yeah, I'm interested in $1 million, and I'm intrigued because did Noah just go up to random doors and ask? I'm interested in learning how to survive falling from a plane, and I'm intrigued because I thought the answer was to keep your legs straight. By stating what I should not do, the thumbnail is implying that it does know the answer, so now I'm double intrigued. I'm gonna click on both of these videos because I'm interested and intrigued. Here, unfortunately, I'm not interested in the confusing title, nor am I intrigued by the thumbnail that I can't really tell what's going on. And this video I'm interested in because I never thought JPEG was horrible, and now I'm super intrigued because, oh my gosh, is that the image quality difference? I have to click and learn what I've been doing wrong all these years. Interested, intrigued. When planning my title and thumbnail, one exercise I like to do is I like to close my eyes. And for several minutes, I'll keep my eyes closed while envisioning myself going to click on a video to watch it. What's making that video feel so intriguing to me that I'm going to click and watch it? What is the title and thumbnail of that video I'm seeing? And when the title comes to me, I type it out and draw out the thumbnail I see. And that works about 50% of the time. If when I type out the title, it just doesn't look right or doesn't feel right to me, then I just go through the same process again.
I think a lot of people think editing is very boring and tedious and long, and you need a lot of patience for it. And it could be all true, but I think you just need to find the right project.
And that's just so exciting.